Well, this is another big story that we've been on top of. This is a live look now at the Fulton County Courthouse. This is in the state of Georgia, where former President Donald Trump is due to appear today. We know the former president is scheduled to turn himself in on charges of election interference in that state, and that means all eyes are on the courthouse today. Joining me now with a closer look at the case and its implications is political science professor Stephen Caliendo from North Central College. It's always a pleasure to have you here breaking this all down for us.
Thanks, Tia. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Now, we've already seen, obviously Trump not implicated alone in this. We've seen some of those images of his co-defendants from their booking photos for all of this. Do we expect to see an image like that, a mugshot of the former president as well?
I think there's still negotiations about that. I mean, all indications early on when the indictment was handed down from the sheriff's office was that these 19 were going to be treated more or less the same as anybody else coming through. Of course, they're not completely being treated that way. They're not removing their shoelaces and belts, and they're not making them put on jumpsuits to get pictures taken. The former president hasn't had mugshots in the other indictments because it was determined that everybody knows what he looks like. That's the purpose of a mugshot. It's really not necessary here, except for the fact that I think the sheriff wants to try to treat these defendants like most others.
Professor Caliendo, obviously this case is a little bit different because we're talking about a state case. How does that differ from the other cases that are against Trump right now?
Well, for now, it's a state case, and it will be a state case in terms of state charges. But we already know that at least one defendant, Mark Meadows, has asked for it to be moved to a federal jurisdiction. It would still be state charges. It would still be prosecuted by the DA's office, but it would be a federal judge, and it would be a federal jury pool. That's one of the main differences, where the jury pool would be broader in a federal case because it's the entire district available, as opposed to simply the county, the Fulton County jury pool. And so that would be one major difference. The other thing, of course, is if there's a conviction and a president cannot be pardoned, or the conviction cannot be pardoned when it's a state case, only if it's a federal case. And so that's a big difference to these particular defendants.
Do you think that what happens in this Georgia case will impact the other cases that are already against Trump?
So much of this, Tia, is going to be about timing. We know that at least one of the defendants has asked for a speedy trial, and under Georgia law, that means it has to happen in about 2 months. And so Fani Willis has indicated a late October date for the trial. That is all 19 defendants. Certainly there will be arguments for severance. We already have indications that that's going to happen. But they're not all going to be tried together. Some of them are probably going to flip and turn state's evidence and testify against other people. Others will have their case removed, maybe in clumps. But the date at which this is all going to happen, compared to the date for the federal cases, that timing matters a lot when the witnesses get deposed and how much evidence is brought forward. So there's a lot that we're going to know in the next couple of weeks.
Professor Caliendo, in terms of Trump, right, we know that obviously he is seeking the Republican nomination. It is very obvious right now, at least it has been as of late, that he's been the front runner. With these cases stacked up against him, does that impact how he's able to run for president? For example, if he wants to go to another state and stomp in those states, will that be impacted by these cases at all?
No, and nothing that I've seen in the terms of his bond agreement don't allow him to travel state to state. In fact, he's coming into Georgia, going to do this and go right back to New Jersey, I think. And so he'll be able to move around the country. The real issue is timing. How much time does he have? How much time does he have to assist in his own defense? Certainly the legal team is going to do a lot of the work, but a defendant has to be able to assist in their own defense. His full-time job is campaigning for president of the United States. And so any time that's any distraction from that affects his ability to campaign. And you know, of course, how the nomination season works. It's not a one-day election. We have week after week after week of contests in different states. And assuming that the former president stays in the race, is going to have to be able to campaign in those states between January and August.
Absolutely right. Now, I know that you were just talking about this not too long ago, but I want to go back to something that you said. We know that they wanted to move this case to a federal court. Obviously, we talked about the reasoning of why. But one thing I'm thinking about here is we haven't seen any of these proceedings play out in front of a camera. Does that change in the state of Georgia, because this is a state case, that we would see those proceedings play out on TV potentially?
Potentially. Cameras are not banned. from courtrooms in Georgia, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be on. And I think that the judge is going to have all kinds of considerations about whether or not, of course, this is in the public interest for sure. But the judge also doesn't want this turning into a circus and doesn't want the kind of scrutiny that sometimes comes with a televised trial. So there's a determination that could be made. When we talked about this in the federal cases, of course, it's not even a question. Unless the rules change or they suspend the rules, there will not be cameras in those trials. But there very well may be here.
Right. All right. Well, we'll be watching, that's for sure. Professor Caliendo, again, it's always a pleasure to have you here on First at 4. Thank you for your input.
Have a great night.
You too. Natalie and Anthony, I'll send it back to you.